Hi everyone, so today I'm going to talk about collection views. Collection views are a really essential part of iOS development because they help you display lists or collections of data. Now you can also do that with table views, but collection views are more powerful because they're more customizable. So they're really prevalent in iOS development. You'll see them in a lot of iOS apps. And today the topics that I'm going to be covering regarding them are collection view basics, custom cell classes, interactive cells, and insertion, deletion, and reloading with collection views. A quick note, I'm going to be using programmatic UI throughout the entire tutorial, so we're not going to be touching the storyboard too much. Also, I just wanted to put out there that a lot of people, while trying to pick up iOS development and running through some of the beginning few tutorials, will try to just copy and imitate what's going on. And that's really not the best way to do it because that'll help you get through it real quick, but at the same time, it won't help you in the long run. So I'm going to do my best job to explain everything that's going on. And if you guys have questions, then please comment or go to Google or Stack Overflow or Apple's documentation and research that. It's really important to understand, not just copy. So without further ado, let's get started. First thing that I've done is I've gathered 10 stock photos of food that will display in our collection view. So if you don't have 10 images lying around to put in your collection view, then please go ahead and download them. So next thing, we'll go to Xcode and let's do File, New Project, and Single View Application. And I'm just going to call this AK Tutorial right now, but you can call it whatever you like. And we'll go ahead and save that project. So you'll see now that some of the starter files have been generated. So if we go to the storyboard, we'll see a view controller is already there. Now one way to approach this could be to find the collection view in Interface Builder and drag and drop that and go from there. But as I said, we're not going to be touching the storyboard too much. So let's go straight to the viewcontroller.swift file. Awesome. So the first thing that we need to do is set up the collection view. And by setting up, I mean we want to instantiate it, and then we want to add it to the current view controller's view. So we'll write a function called setUpCollectionView, and we'll call this from our viewDidLoad method. And before moving forward, we'll declare a class variable called collectionView. So in order to instantiate our collection view, we're going to need a layout object. So let's make that before we move further. Let layout equal UICollectionView flow layout. And now we can go ahead and instantiate our collection view. So collection view equals UICollectionView. And we'll choose this bottom option right here. So in this bottom option, we have to specify a frame and a layout. So the layout's right here, and for the frame, you can use whatever you like. I want the collection view to be the whole screen. So I'm just gonna make the frame the current view controller's view's current frame. And one of the good things about Swift is I don't have to write self.view.frame because the compiler automatically assumes that when you're in any sort of instance class that you are referring to that instance. So I can just write view.frame. Awesome. So the next thing I need to specify is a layout, and I've done that here. And the layout's really powerful. It lets you customize how your collection view is going to look. So a couple of things you can do with the layout, for example, are set the inner item spacing, the minimum inner item spacing or minimum line spacing, but we'll get back to that later if we have time. Next thing that I want to do is add this collection view to the view controller's current view. In order to do that, all I need to say is view.addSubView collection view, and that'll add it. Now, I want the collection view to have some sort of a background color, and we'll change this to white later, but for the time being, let's have that background color be green so we can easily see that the collection view's been added when we test. So collection view.background color equals UI color dot green. So at this point, we can go ahead and pick a sim. And looks like Xcode 8 is being a little slow sometimes. So I picked iPhone 7. And we can go ahead and try and run it. Awesome, so now that it's loaded, you'll see the whole screen is green. So the collection view has been added to the view controller's current view, and it is taking up the whole screen. Cool. All right, so let's move forward. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to specify an array containing the images that we're going to want to display in our collection view. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to say var images equals and I'm going to put an array up here as a class variable. So var UI image, and I'll say named food1, and I'll continue to do this for all of the images. But before we do that, what are we forgetting? We're forgetting to import the images. So let's go to our folder in Finder, and let's go to assets.xcassettes right here, and we'll select all of these and we'll drag and drop them, and boom, now all the images are in our project. So let's go back and finish this array right here. So bear with me as I go through all of them. Awesome, so we have our array of images now. Alright, but we want to make sure that this array of images shows up in the collection view. And in order to do that, one thing that's really important is for us to update the collection view's data source. And just for general layout, we also want to implement all the implement the necessary delegate methods for UICollectionView delegate. So to implement the delegate methods that we need, let's go ahead and make an extension of the current view controller. So we'll say extension view controller, and then we'll say UICollectionView delegate and UICollectionView data source. Okay, so now let's implement some of the important delegate methods. So the first one is a number of sections. So a collection view can have multiple sections. Typically, you want a collection view to have multiple sections if there's different types of cells that you want displayed as different sections, or you just want to separate some cells from other cells, or organize them in such a manner. So for us, we only need one section because we're only going to have one type of cell. So I'm just going to return 1. Next thing we need is number of items in section. So what are we going to return here? See if you can guess. That's right, we're going to return the length of this images array. So images.count. So basically what that is saying is that for each image in this array, we'll have one cell in the first section of this collection view. Awesome. So before moving forward, let's comment some of our code so that we remember what's going on. So instead of collection view, we're basically initializing a collection view and adding it to the view controller's current view. Now, in this delegate method, we're specifying the number of sections in the collection view, and in this delegate method, we're specifying the number of cells in the given section. So, okay, so one important thing to realize here is right now we're only giving it one section, but if we gave it 2 sections, for example, and we wanted to say have like 3 cells in the first section and 4 cells in the last, here's how we would do that. So we'd say if section equals 0. So if it's the first section, then return 3. Otherwise, return 4. So you'll see that this section as an int is provided to us in this method. So we can use that when we want. But for our basic case, we don't need to do that, so we'll change this back to return images.count. And we'll change this back to 1. Alright, so the next method that we have to implement is called cell for item at index path. So we'll pop it in right there. But before we can do this, we need our custom cell class. So basically, the reason we need a custom cell class in this case is that the layout for each cell is going to be something that we will be determining. We'll be determining, all the elements that we want in each cell, and also, how they all look. So before we can move forward, we need to create a new file. So we'll go to File, New File, and we'll make sure it's Cocoa Touch class, and we'll call this Food Collection View Cell. Cool. And we'll pop it into our project. So in Food Collection View Cell, we want basically just an image. So what we're going to do is we're going to override this method called awake from nib. And this isn't exactly the same thing, but you can think of it in your mind sort of as view to load is to view controller, awake to nib is to collection view cell. Basically, it's a method to set up the cell before it's displayed. So in this cell, what we want is just one image view that we'll set the image of in our view controller. So let's make a class variable called var food image view, and it'll have type UI image view. And now let's set that up, and we'll add it to the cell's content view. So let's say food image view equals UI image view, and for the frame, I wanted to take up the entire content view of the cell. I want the food's image to be basically the size of the cell. So in order to do this, we're going to say content view dot frame. Then we're going to specify some parameters. So we'll make sure that the content mode is dot scale aspect fill, so that the image doesn't appear stretched but still fills the entire space. We'll also clip the image to bounds, and then we'll add it to the content view of the current cell. So content view dot add subview food image view. And make sure that when you're adding these UI elements to a cell, you're adding it to the content view, not the collection, not the cell itself. So let's write a comment in there for ourselves. So remember to add UI elements to the content view, not the cell itself. Okay, so now we have our custom cell class. So let's go into our view controller and let's make use of this. So before we can use our custom cell class here, we want to register it with this collection view. So here's how we do that. We'll go into our setup collection view method and we'll do collectionview.register, and we'll choose this first option right here. So now it's asking us which cell class do you want to register to work with this collection view. And we've made a custom cell class for ourselves, so let's use that. Food collection view cell.self. And now it's saying give it a reuse identifier. So I'm going to call this food cell. Basically, this reuse identifier is going to help us identify this type of cell with this collection view. So over here, we've registered this reuse identifier to work with food collection view cell, and we've registered that with the collection view over here. So next, we can now use this cell class in our cell for item at index path method. So here's how we do that. We say let cell equal collection view dot dq reusable cell with identifier for index path, and we'll use this first one right here. And what's the reuse identifier going to be? I'll give you a hint. It's already on the screen. Yeah, that's right. It's food cell. So let's write food cell there. And index path will be this argument that we're passing in from there. And we'll go into this a little bit more later. But index path essentially helps us refer to a given cell with respect to which section it's in. So it helps us identify what the row number is and what the section number is. So before moving forward, what we want to do is we want to cast this to the food collection view cell type that we registered right here. So basic typecasting in Swift, we'll just say as food collection view cell. Cool. So the next thing that we want to do in this method is we want to call this cell's awake from nib method so that our image view gets set up right here. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll say cell.awake from nib, and then we'll return cell. And boom, our cell is set up now, now all that's left to do essentially with it is populate it with data. So populate it with the image that's over here. So a lot of people, when they start out, they'll use self-item and index path in order to populate their cell with data. But these days, a lot of developers are encouraging you to only set up your cell in this method and use another method to set the data of the cell. And the reason behind that is that it makes your feed a lot smoother when you have many cells. And sometimes, if you're making some API calls in order to get images and then set them, then it can also be faster as well. So I'm not going to teach you a bad practice to begin with, even though it may be easier. Let's go straight into that and actually use that method. That method is called willDisplayCell. And basically, this is called after this method right here, but before the cell is displayed. So just think of it as if at this point, when in your execution this method is being called, then a reusable cell is being dequeued from the collection view. It's being set up, and then right before it's supposed to display on your screen, this method will get called. And essentially, that's really when we need to set the data. We don't need the data set before that. We need the data set right before the cell is displayed. So without further ado, over here, we're being passed the current cell as a UICollectionView cell. But before we can do anything with it, we really need to typecast it to this food collection view cell again. So we'll say let food cell equals cell as food collection view cell. And in here, we can specify the image that we want the cell's food image view to have. So we'll say food cell dot food image view, and you'll notice that this is this is showing up in your code completion suggestions because we've typecasted it. So we'll say food cell dot food image view dot image, and now we want to set that to some image. But how do we determine which image to set it to? So let's think about this. We have images.count as the number of items that'll be in our collection view, and we have this images array up top. So really what we're looking for is some sort of index that we can use, and then using that index we can pull out the right image from this images array. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier. This index path that's being provided in these two methods, that's exactly what we need for that. So you'll notice that index path is really useful because for the current cell, it'll give you a couple of things. It'll give you index path.row to determine which row it is, and it'll also give you index path.section to tell you which section of the collection it's in. For us right now, all we need to do is use the row. So what we can say is foodcell.foodimageview.image equals images of index path.row. And this should set the cell's image accordingly. So with that, we've set up a very basic collection view, and we still have more to learn, but let's test this out before moving forward. So let's run our sim. and we'll notice it's not working. So first thing I forgot to change is I want the background color to be white. But let's think about why this isn't working. And there's a very specific reason actually. So in order for these delegate methods to be called, what do we need to do? Think about it for a sec. That's right. We need to set the collection views delegate and data source. So in here, we'll say collectionView.delegate equals self, and collectionView.dataSource equals self. So then the compiler knows that this collection view's data source will come from this view controller, and its delegate methods that are implemented, and similarly the same for the delegate. So then it'll be able to access these methods essentially. So let's give that another try and keep our fingers crossed. And what do you know? It works. But does it look how we want it to? I don't think so. And part of the reason for that is we haven't specified how big we want these cells to be. So in order to do that, we have another delegate method. Remember what I said earlier? I want the cells to take the full screen, and I also don't want the spacing between cells. So first, let's think about the spacing. We can go back up here and set up collection view, and we can say layout.minimum line spacing, and I want to set that to 0. And we can say layout.minimum inner item spacing, and I can also set that to 0. Now we need to specify the size of the cell. And let's take a look at the collection view methods that we have here. Do any of these seem like they would help us specify the size of the cell? I don't know about you, but I don't think so. So the truth is, we need another protocol up here. So UICollectionView flow delegate, UICollectionView delegate flow layout. And now if we type in, for example, CG size, then we'll find this method right here, and this is the one that we want to implement. And if you look at the method, it's called size for item at index path. So this will let us specify a CG size for an item at a given index. So we want the same size for all items. So let's just return that real quick. So we'll say return CG size, and we want to specify the width and the height. So I want the width to be the entire view controller's width, or the current frame's width. So I'm just going to say view.frame.width, and that should be the entire width of the view controller for right now. And height, I'll say 200. Okay, well, let's give this another try. Awesome, so now it's doing what we actually wanted it to. And you can scroll through these, and you'll see all these nice pictures of food. So, before moving forward, congrats. You've implemented a basic collection view. So give yourself a pat on the back. So let's go back to the keynote real quick. And so far we've covered collection view basics, custom cell classes, but we haven't covered interactive cells, insertion, deletion, or reloading. So I'm going to save that for the next video tutorial. Please do watch it, and thanks for watching this one.